Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a chemistry lesson to share with you today. We're working through our live education Waldorf curriculum for chemistry, and today's lesson is an introduction to chemical processes, specifically on combustion. This introductory lesson has spanned a few days, and there are many lesson projects and activities to do for this lesson on combustion. We're going to be doing this illustration in our main lesson book. However, we're also going to be doing a watercolor that we're going to add to our main lesson book. So I'm going to start this out by using the onion skin that's in between this main lesson book page. And so we have blank pages on both sides and then an onion skin separating those pages. You're not supposed to use it to draw on, but I am going to be doing an illustration on this page that has the look of like a fire burning. And I think that it's going to look pretty neat on the onion skin. And once I get done, I realized that you can't really see the colors as strongly as I hoped, and I don't really care for it too much. And it was just a little bit of an additional illustration that wasn't necessary since we're going to be doing our watercolor illustration for this. And I think the watercolor turns out a lot better than this color pencil drawing. I am using my Lyra color pencils for this illustration. And when I was looking at the live education curriculum, I really love the illustration that's in the curriculum, and I was trying to figure out what art medium was used. So I'm trying it out with some color pencils, and it's just not getting the look that I want. So we end up doing this again with watercolors, and I'm a lot more pleased with the results that we get with watercolors. And we can add those sheets into our main lesson book, but it is problematic. You'll be able to see a little bit later on why that's the case. And once I am done with this, you can see that it's really beautiful, but the colors are just not as vibrant, and it's really hard to tell that it's a fire. So we're going to continue this lesson. Now, the lesson itself spanned several days, and we are doing our work for this lesson over about 3 days. So we did the illustration on one day, we did the watercolor on another day, and we did the written content on another day. And during this time, we are progressing with our lessons. This is the Fabriano watercolor paper. This is 140-pound paper. This is smooth paper, so it is the hot press paper. So this is a little different than the cold press paper that's more textured. And I've got my water and my paintbrushes, and I have 2 sets of pan watercolors. This is the Stockmar set. This is a new set for us, and this one comes with the colors that you would find in the liquid concentrates. I'm used to using just the 6 colors, the 3 primaries, and a couple other colors as well. So it's kind of nice to have some of the other colors that we don't typically use. But it has the blues that we like to use, and it has the yellow and the orange that we're typically using. This is the Lyra watercolor set, and this one we are more familiar with. We use it more often. We have the one that has the 2 trays, so it has a really big assortment of colors, and they are slightly opaque, so they're not completely translucent. I'm using a little bit of tape on all 4 sides, and then I'm wetting my paper with my paintbrush, which is not a typical technique. You could either soak your paper entirely, or you can add a little bit of water to your page the way I did by just taking my paintbrush. You could also use a sponge to wet your page as well. And I just want a little bit of water so that the colors could start to swim around a little bit, but I still wanted to have a little bit of definition. And you can't see any definition at the moment because I'm sort of laying down my base color first for the fire. I want a lot of yellow and golden yellow first. And then I have the bottom part of the page, which is mostly browns and a little bit of blue. There should be more blue at the base of the fire. And now I'm adding a little bit more textured dimension by adding some darker reds and oranges and a red orange as well, just to give it some more movement. Now, for it being just fire and slightly abstract, to be honest, this ended up being a very challenging lesson to do. And both my daughter and I found this difficult because it was hard to get the look that we wanted. Having to illustrate fire either with color pencils or with watercolors is surprisingly more challenging than you'd expect. You're trying to get the flow of the fire and you're trying to get the colors to be correct, and fire itself is translucent in some parts of it, and there are quite a few colors and then some emptiness as well. So trying to get that in an illustration was a lot more challenging than we expected. Now, using watercolors I thought would help us achieve a little bit of more of that movement, and while it sort of does, by the time I'm done with this watercolor, I don't really feel like I've gotten the look that I want. However, once it dries, I am really pleased with it. So we spend a lot of time doing the artistic portion of these lessons, and it may seem somewhat like a waste of time, or why are we spending so much time doing this? But the reflection we get when we are doing our watercolors and the attention to detail is why we're doing some of these artistic lessons. So this is what it looks like when it's still wet, but the project is done and it's not looking as great as it's going to look when it dries. But part of the process is accepting that it will dry and the water will pool in some areas and sort of take that color and move it a little bit. I'm trimming it down because once I removed the tape, there was those white spaces, and I'm adding the corner punch just to round out the edges, and this is just optional. And I really like the way that this turned out in the end. And now we're going to paste that into our main lesson book with some double stick tape. And now we can write our narration on the opposing page. And the reason why adding in your watercolors into your main lesson book is a challenge is because the watercolor that we previously did, we did on the water. It was a very, again, abstract illustration of water on watercolor paper, but we used cold press watercolor paper, which means the paper is textured. So as I'm writing this, there's texture in the writing because that page is right below this page that we're writing on. And then as we move forward, the next page will have some creases where the thick paper is meeting the rest of the main lesson book. I'm using a few additional resources for the narration of this lesson. We have Super Simple Chemistry by D.K. Smithsonian and D.K. Eyewitness Book for Chemistry, and that just provide a little bit more details for combustion as well as some of the other chemical processes that we're doing for this lesson. So here's the final look of the written narration on one side, the illustration on the other side. My daughter was able to copy this for her main lesson book rather than me doing an illustration on the chalkboard, and then she can review the written narration to compose her own narration, or for some parts she can actually do copy work based on the narration that I wrote, which are basically my notes for delivering the lesson. I hope that you enjoyed this look at our chemistry lesson for combustion. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video that has more information on the lessons that we're doing, as well as links to all of the resources we're using for our main lesson block on chemistry. You can find the link to that blog post in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.